Yo, what's going on? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today we're doing another episode of NBA Hot Takes. You probably know the drill at this point. I went to Twitter and asked y'all for some of your hottest NBA takes, particularly for the upcoming season, which thankfully is only a month away. Really been missing hoops. We've got Media Day right around the corner preseason, and then the regular season starts in less than a month at this point. So it's a great time to figure out what your hottest takes are for this season. I picked out some of my favorites. I'm going to tell you whether I agree or disagree with them and exactly why. But I also want to hear from y'all. Let me know in the comment section below what some of your hottest takes are and respond to each of these takes. What do you think? Which ones do you like the best, the worst, and everything in between? As usual, leave a like and subscribe if you do enjoy. Helps the channel out a ton. And let's get into the hot takes. This first take comes from my guy Matt, 6 Rings of Steel, and he says that Jalen Brunson will finish top 5 in MVP voting. I don't hate this take. Obviously, this is going to depend on if the Knicks can jump up in the standings, but the Eastern Conference is kind of a mess at this point, and this is something we'll talk about more later on in the video with some of these other takes. It's really strange over there, particularly because you've got great teams like the Bucks and the Celtics. The Cavaliers are pretty good. The Heat can be good if they add Dame, but there's rumors that they might not get him. The Sixers can be great, but they're in flux right now with the James Harden situation. So there are some great teams and some theoretically great teams, but a lot of these teams are in limbo. So maybe it's a prime opportunity for the Knicks to jump up in the standings. And with how great Brunson was last year in his first season with the Knicks, I wouldn't be surprised if he's much better this year. And if Brunson's even better than last year when he should have already been an all-star, I could 100% see him getting an all-NBA slot and maybe even sliding up into the MVP conversation. Top 5 might be a little too high because you do have, of course, Giannis. You're probably going to get some guys from the Suns over there. Jokic is going to be there. Embiid if the Sixers don't completely fall off a cliff, which we'll talk about the Sixers a little bit later. Like, you have some of your top contenders. We could see some other young players jump up too if their teams rise in the standings. But I think Brunson could possibly end up top 5. I don't think this is crazy. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but it's not the most absurd thing I've seen. Brunson is ridiculous. Like, I don't think people realize just how good he was this past year. If the Knicks can take a jump, or say they make a star acquisition around the deadline, which helps them be one of those top seeds in the East, Brunson could put his name up there in those talks. This second take comes from Blazers Palace, who says that the Blazers are making the playoffs as an 8 seed. I don't agree with this one pretty much whatsoever. Even if they keep Dame, they weren't a playoff team this past year. The only big change they made was the addition of Scoot Henderson. They got Chris Murray too in the draft, Rupert in the draft as well, but I don't think those guys turn them from a non-play-in team to an 8-seeded playoff squad. I just don't see that happening, especially when Dame last year had arguably the best individual season of his career, and they really weren't even in the race towards the end of the year. So I just don't see that happening, and plus, they're going to end up trading Dame. I'm at this point going to be surprised if he's on the roster by the time Media Day and more specifically opening day does roll around for the league. Rumors are really starting to heat up, and even if they got some really solid pieces in a Dame trade, like there's a rumor they could end up sending Nurkic and maybe a piece over to the Suns for DeAndre Ayton, which in my opinion is a bit of an upgrade at the center position. Even if they add him, like him, Jeremy Grant, Simon, Scoot, that's not a squad that's going to get you to the playoffs. They're not going to bring you further than Dame did last year, and he didn't even get you to the playoffs in the first place. Plus, the West is just ridiculously stacked. So if the Blazers made the playoffs, I would be completely shocked. In fact, I'd be shocked if they even made the play-in. I think once they trade Dame, they're probably going to be a 14, 15, 13 seed in the West. Following that up, we've got a take from Kurt, who says that the Pistons will make the second round of the playoffs this season, with K taking an all-star jump and Duren becoming the primary center. Again, one that I really don't agree with whatsoever. Now, can the Pistons make a jump? For sure. Cade coming back, hopefully playing a full season. He looked pretty good to start last year. The efficiency was rough, but he was dealing with an injury that would end up taking him out for the entire season pretty much. When he gets in, he gets fully healthy in the third year. I think Cade's going to be great. I would not be surprised at all if Cade Cunningham is an all-star this season. And it's no secret that I love what the Pistons are building over there. I think him and Ivy are a really interesting backcourt. I love the pickup of Asar Thompson. I think he's a great connecting piece, a really fun defensive chaos creator from day one. There's no secret that I love Duren's game. He's one of my favorite young bigs in the league. Like, I think the Pistons have one of the best young cores by far in the NBA. I like the addition of Joe Harris as a shooter. You've got Bojan over there too. Like, this team could certainly be a play-in squad and maybe make some kind of playoff push if everything clicks at the right time. Maybe they make another acquisition. I wouldn't be the most surprised person in the world if they end up making the playoffs as one of the bottom seeds. But to make the second round, I would be shocked. They would have to defeat like the Bucks or the Celtics or one of those other top teams in the Eastern Conference. I just don't think they're ready for that yet. Maybe next season or in a couple years, they could end up reaching that point. But to me, it's way too early. The Cade part, I think, could certainly be an all-star, but a second round appearance would be shocking. This next take comes from Young Orochi, who says that the Kings are going to be the 2 seed, win 56 games, and De'Aaron Fox will lose the MVP to Jason Tatum. Let's start with the end of this take because it's a loaded one. Jason Tatum, it's no secret that I think he can win MVP. When I did my way too early NBA awards prediction video like a month or two ago at this point, I picked Jason Tatum to win MVP. Not sure if I'm going to pick him by the time the season rolls around, but I certainly think he is a really interesting candidate to win the award this year. So I like that part of the take. De'Aaron Fox losing the MVP to Jason Tatum, to me, implies that he comes in like second. That might be a little bit high for De'Aaron Fox, mainly because, again, like I said earlier with the Jalen Brunson take, there's just so many great players in the NBA like Jokic, who's probably going to finish top 3. I'd be surprised if he didn't. Giannis and Embiid might be up there as well, depending on what the Sixers do. It's just going to be hard for Fox to compete with some of those guys, but I do think he can be one of the top competitors, especially if the Kings have a season like you're projecting here. Being the 2 seed and winning 56 games would do a lot for Fox's case, and if that is the case, the Kings have a season like that, why can't he be a top finisher? I don't think it's unrealistic at all to say that the Kings end up as the 2 seed because they were the 3 seed last year and certainly got better. I like the addition of Sasha Vezenkov coming over. I think Chris Duarte is an underrated pickup, and plus you're just going to have another season of development for a guy like Keegan Murray. Plus De'Aaron Fox, I think, is another level he can take his game to as he and Sabonis continue to build chemistry in their second year under Mike Brown. I don't think they're going to win 56 games. I'll say that straight up, just because I don't know if anybody in the NBA is going to win 56 games this year because of how stacked it is across the board, especially in that Western Conference. But a Kings 2 seed and a De'Aaron Fox like top 5, 10 MVP finish, certainly possible this upcoming year. Now we've got a take from Thomas, who says that the Memphis Grizzlies are going to drop to the play-in tournament. This might sound wild when you think about the fact that the Grizzlies have been consistently one of the top seeds in the West over the past few years, but I don't think it's that crazy to say that this is the case. In fact, I've even thought about it a little bit when I'm trying to formulate my predictions for this upcoming year. Somebody's got to drop down the standings, and the Grizzlies seem like a potential candidate to do so. Now, do I think they got significantly worse from last year? No. If anything, I think they might have gotten better, but it's a weird situation that they're in right now. Ja Morant is going to miss the first 25 games of the season, and the Grizzlies, over the last couple years, have certainly held their own when Ja Morant has missed time. They've not only stayed afloat, but they've been pretty good even when Ja Morant is gone. There are going to be some people who say that they're better without Ja Morant. That's just not the case, and I think people are going to realize that in these first 25 games. Marcus Smart comes in, and maybe he can fill that Ja Morant role a little bit, but I just don't know if the team's going to be ready to hold up without Ja at the beginning of the season as they're trying to integrate Marcus Smart. They're trying to figure out who plays that 3 spot now that Dylan Brooks is gone. Is it a guy like Zaire Williams? Is it David Roddy? Like, who starts at the 3 for them when Ja Morant isn't there to fill out that starting lineup? Even when Ja comes back, do you start Marcus Smart and Desmond Bane together at the 2 and the 3 with Ja at the 1 there? Do you bring Smart off the bench and try and put someone else at the 3? They're still missing Brandon Clark for most of the year with that Achilles injury. It's just a lot going on over there in Memphis. And if they start slow with how stacked the West is, even if by the end of the year, the Grizzlies probably will be one of the best teams in the West, I'm very confident that on paper, this roster is incredible. But in terms of the standings, we saw how close it was last year, where teams before the year that we thought were going to be contenders ended up sliding down to like the 6, the 7 seed at the end of the season. It's just really tough. A single bad stretch can end up costing you majorly in terms of positioning in this conference. I think if the Grizzlies slide a lot at the beginning of the year, we could see them as a play-in team. I don't think it's that unrealistic to say. This next take comes from Bryce, who says that Philly is going to implode and won't make it out of the play-in tournament. There is a scenario in my eyes where this one comes true, but I think it's pretty unlikely. It would take a large snowball effect for Philly to straight up not make the playoffs. Like, think about that. The 76ers with Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, even if James Harden doesn't show up, say the entire year he says, I'm not playing for the Sixers, and Morey just doesn't deal him for any assets, even past the trade deadline, in the worst case scenario for him and the Sixers, say no deal gets done the entire year and he sits out, this is still a talented enough team under Nick Nurse in my eyes to make it to the playoffs and avoid the play-in tournament entirely. Even if they make the play-in tournament, you've got Joel Embiid. I think they're going to get it done and make it into the playoffs. I would be surprised. Now, if Harden doesn't play and Embiid deals with injury maybe halfway through the year, he's disgruntled because they haven't traded Harden and it becomes well known that he wants a trade or something like that, maybe that tanks the team a little bit. Maxey deals with injury. Like, things could certainly snowball beyond Harden just not playing, but unless they face significant injury, I think the Sixers team, even without James Harden, is still a playoff squad. Now we've got a take from Dolphins Beta, who says that the Nets have the best defense in the entire NBA and end up as a top 5 seed. I don't disagree on the defensive take. I think they certainly can be the best unit on that end in the entire NBA this upcoming season. At the very least, will be a top 10, maybe even top 5 unit. They've got some great players over there. Mikal Bridges has always been a pretty solid defender, even a great defender in Phoenix. It dropped off a little bit when he got to Brooklyn because of the offensive load he was carrying, but I could see him getting a bit back to his usual self this year. They've got Ben Simmons, who I believe can bounce back to become an all-defensive caliber guy, or at the very least, a pretty good defender this upcoming season. Nick Claxton was one of the top DPOY candidates last year before the Kyrie and Kevin Durant trades. They've got good wing defenders like Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson's out there too. Like, this will probably be a pretty good defensive team. I anticipate them being one of the better squads in the league on that end of the floor. The problem is, for them to be a top 5 seed, they have to have a solid offense, and that was not the case after the deadline this past year. They were a bottom 5 offense, and I don't anticipate that improving a lot. We still don't know if Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton can exist on the court together. While they'd be great defensively, is Ben Simmons going to shoot the ball this time? What is he even going to look like this year on the offensive end? Mikal Bridges was great in his own right last year, but him as the number 1 option didn't lead to a lot of wins, which I don't think is his fault. He was phenomenal. The efficiency jumped, the numbers jumped. Like, he was extremely good, an all-star caliber player. I just don't know if there's enough consistent options around him for this to be a solid offense. I think they're probably going to be in the bottom half of offenses in the league this year, and that combined with the fact that the Eastern Conference just has great squads, I would be stunned if the Nets were a top 5 seed, if I'm being honest. If they make a big trade, maybe, but with the way the squad is currently constructed and all the question marks surrounding them, I think they're probably more of a play-in team as opposed to a top 5 squad. Second to last take comes from Nick, who says that the Lakers and Golden State Warriors will both miss the playoffs. This would be crazy. I can see a world where one or the other misses the playoffs, but both would be insane in my opinion. Let's talk about the scenario where one of these teams misses. The Lakers, I think, are one of the best teams in the Western Conference. We saw that after the deadline last year. The acquisitions that they made really turned this team around. When LeBron and AD are on the court, this team is really difficult to stop. They also made some additions in this offseason that I like. I just think this team is going to be phenomenal. But if they do end up missing LeBron and or Anthony Davis for a significant period of time, which has been the case pretty consistently over the last couple of seasons, they could certainly drop in the standings. And when we talk about how deep this West is, how many teams I think could compete for those top 6-7 spots, all it takes is one bad play-in game or one bad stretch that puts you towards the bottom of the play-in. You have a bad game there, and you miss the playoffs, especially because the teams you're probably going to be playing in the play-in are really good in their own right. So that's a world where I see the Lakers missing the playoffs. If they're healthy, I think there's no way, but injuries could pop up. Similar thing with the Golden State Warriors. I don't see them missing the playoffs. It's the Warriors. They're pretty consistently in there when they're healthy, but they have dealt with some injuries recently. Chris Paul is their big addition, and he's been injury prone recently. Maybe that acquisition doesn't work out. If Wiggins misses some time, Steph Curry has had some injuries here and there. Sure, in that world, I could see the Warriors missing the playoffs. Maybe if both of them have drastic injuries, they both miss, but I'd be stunned if either of them did. I think when fully healthy, these are two of the better teams in the West. And to wrap things up, we've got a final take from Baker, who says that Oklahoma City is not going to make the huge leap that everyone thinks they will. The young players will continue to develop, and Chet will be great from the start, but in a competitive West, they will still be a play-in team. Now, as many of you probably know, I'm a Thunder fan, so I've been trying to remain unbiased when it comes to the team and looking forward to this upcoming season because we are getting a lot of hype, and I do believe it is somewhat warranted. Shea was an All-NBA first-teamer this past year, and I think he's got another level. We've got great young talents like Giddey and J-Dub that could take leaps. The addition of a guy like Vasilije Micic, who can really help our offense. And of course, number 2 overall pick Chet Holmgren coming in to really anchor the defense, which was already pretty good this past year. I think there's a lot of reasons to anticipate that this Thunder team is one of the next squads to take a big leap in that Western Conference and could maybe end up being a really solid playoff team. Some people are even picking us to finish top 4, top 5 in the conference, which I don't think is impossible. A lot of people are saying we could win 50 games, which again, don't think is impossible, but I'm tempering my expectations just a little bit, mainly because it is a really tough West, like Baker says in their hot take. There's 11 teams that could make the playoffs in the West. I keep saying this, and while the Thunder certainly, I think, got a lot better just in terms of development, there are many other teams that also improved at a rapid rate and are probably going to be more stable this upcoming season. I'm not guaranteeing us in the playoffs. I think we will make it, and we probably should make it, but there's so many great teams out there. I think being a play-in team isn't a bad spot to be, and you can still make the playoffs through the play-in tournament. Like if we end up 7, 8, 9, or 10, I'm not too surprised. I think there's a real world where we win like mid-40s, like 43, 44, 45 games, and are still firmly in the play-in tournament because the West is just that deep. We're also a younger team, and there's a lot of veteran-laden squads out in the Western Conference that have been here and done this a million times, so I do think there's a world where we win 50 games or we're one of the top 4, 5, 6 seeds in the West. But at the same time, I think there's also a world where we do end up in the play-in tournament again, even if we look a lot better than last season. With all that being said, those are your hot takes for today's video. Like I said earlier, comment down below if you've got a hot take of your own and what you think about these. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. It helps the channel out a ton. And also comment down below if there's any teams, players, whatever that you want to see me break down in this last month leading up to the season. We're almost there. There's going to be preseason basketball to talk about soon, media day, maybe a Dame trade around the corner. A lot of stuff is coming up in the pipeline, so I'm super excited for that. But yeah, for right now, appreciate y'all tuning in as always. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.